everybody. Saturday afternoon here in Appalachia. Wanted to do this video here before the rains come, thunderstorm around. And I wanted to make this the fourth video about my trips to Rythmia Life Advancement Center in Guanacaste, California 5 years ago. So on the last video, I talked about the third and final trip, which was December 2019. I called it a rite of passage because my life took a drastic turn of big change there. I had been studying channelers for the 4 months before. I'd been watching a lot on Gaia TV about channelers, and I met somebody there who ended up starting the channel some entities right after we got home from Rythmia. And so that was not exactly a coincidence, to say the least. Some other things happen. One of the things that they tell you when you're there is they believe that the mother ayahuasca wears off very quickly, say within 24 hours or so after a night ceremony. My experience was quite different. On the third trip, the last ceremony ended Friday morning, but the last cup of ayahuasca was done late Thursday night or early Friday morning. On Saturday, I was sitting in the front office. It's an outdoor space where the front desk is, and I was sweating my ass off. I was purging again, and there was a young woman there who wanted me to, because I had been a return visitor, she actually wanted to interview me for some podcast or something, I don't know, and I couldn't do it. I was just sitting there very uncomfortable, sweating profusely again. That was on Saturday. But even weirder is when I got home, 4 weeks later, basically, on January 20th, 2020, I went to a crystal bowl healing session. It was about the third time I'd gone to this particular place. It was a yoga studio in Rochester, Michigan. And this woman, Yvonne, very lovely lady, conducted this crystal bowl session. And I sat down. We're all on a yoga mats. There's probably about 40 or 50 people. Most of them are behind me. There's very few people in front of me. She was right there in front of me, not very far away at all. And I remember she goes through this introduction and everybody kind of lays down, but I didn't lay down. Everybody else was laying down, but she's still talking and kind of going like this with the bowls. And finally she stopped talking and I decided to lay down. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm pinned to the mat. Now, if you watch the other videos, what it means to be pinned to the mat when you're on ayahuasca, it means you're going to get sacred surgery. You're pinned to the mat, mouth is kind of locked. You could break it if you want, but you don't want to. And so here I am 4 weeks later, pinned to the mat in this session, and I thought to myself, what the hell's going on here? Because I know what this I know the feeling. Because I had got so much surgery and I was pinned to the mat so many times, I said, okay, 4 weeks have passed, what's going on here? And I got the thought, I asked a question, it's all telepathic. I asked, who's here? And they said, we're the guardians. And it was a very benevolent energy. And if you recall, if you watch the other video on my second trip, where I got astrally abducted by malevolent energy, you know the difference. Okay, if it ever happens, you know. This time, it was a very calm energy. They said, we're the guardians. And I said, what do you want? And they said, we want some of your DNA. Okay. kind of ranks right up there with the mantis beings showing themselves like, whoa, all right. So I'd never heard of the guardians. They said, don't worry, we'll get you back to your session before it ends. And I went, okay, go ahead, let's do it. All right, I allow. And so that was another astral abduction. I didn't see anything. I didn't feel anything. The next thing I know, after they said, we'll get you back to your session before it ends, the next thing I'm aware of is I am back laying on the mat, and I can move, I'm not pinned, and within about 60 or 90 seconds, Yvonne stops playing the crystal bowls. I don't know how long the session lasted. I think it's an hour or more. I have no recollection of this session, none. I wasn't there. And we got up and everybody's milling out, milling around, talking, and a lot of people know each other, a lot of young people. And I walked out, and there's a lady that, she's one of the owners of the place, and she also conducted the Wednesday night meditation session, which I used to go to every Wednesday for about a year. And so we got to know each other a little bit, Jill. And she asked me how the session was, and I just looked at her and I went, something like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. So I went home and I contacted this friend of mine who was the channeler, and I told her what happened. And from there is where she started to get guided to this website that I've linked into a couple of videos called the Ascension Glossary. That's where actually the first thing she got guided to was the definition of the Galactic Warrior for me. And there's a lot of discussion in that website about the guardians and who they are. I'll have to link to it down below. I don't recall the verbiage verbatim, but they are probably a complex entity that, I forget how Ra puts it. It's a mind, body, spirit complex, which is that's actually what we are. There's another phrase that he uses, but they are a spiritual complex with some individuality, but also highly connected, kind of like connected from the waist down. So they're part one and part individual, but they do speak of themselves in the plural. And it was quite the adventure. That was January 20th, 2020. And to this day, I still think about it and kind of in awe, wondering what happened. But that was soon after that. It was actually about 3 weeks after that I moved down to Florida, and I fulfilled the idea that I had on my very first trip to Rythmia, which is when I was, after Monday's, the very first ceremony, and Tuesday when I said I needed to go home and get rid of all my stuff. In between my coming home on my third trip and mid-February, I basically got rid of everything that I owned. What was left was what I could fit in the back of my Subaru. Wasn't much. And moved down to Florida. And this is where everybody who goes through these plant medicine journeys has a very different experience. Some people have magical healings right there. I had magical experiences if you want to call merging with your inner child and meeting Arcturians and Pleiadians and mantis beings, and getting a new heart and all this stuff. That's kind of a magical experiences. But I didn't get what I would call healed, or much less become whole or holy. What I had was the rite of passage into another phase of life. And it goes along with the book that I was reading, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, going from boy psychology to man psychology. But it did not happen overnight. And it did not happen without a lot of trials and tribulations. I spent the next 3 years or more in basically a very setting of contrast, where on the one hand there was an immense amount of love, and on the other hand there was a dark night of the soul. And our reality is built on contrast, whether it's the law of correspondence, the law of polarity, the law of gender. These are the 3 of the Hermetic laws. They are all the polar opposites. There's, love and fear. Mine was love and this dark night of the soul, this massive amount of trauma that was being reflected back to me, and that I didn't know what to do with. Didn't know how to handle it for a very long time, until I left Florida, which was 2 years ago, and came to Appalachia and really started to probe deeply inside. And what I realized that I had to do was I had to ground myself in this body for the first time in my life. I had never done that. I've always been on the move. I've always been on the run. When things get a little weird, it's not unusual for me to run away, as I've explained on my first trip to Rythmia. Do you always run away? Yes. We don't run away anymore. So we had to stop running, plant myself. And I've talked about this before, and this is, I'm surrounded by very tall trees right now. I'm sitting here, there's pine trees and southern red oak, yellow and white pines growing all around me. And, the only way for them to grow and connect to the sky, Father Sky, is they have to grow deep roots into Mother Earth. And it's a great metaphor for the human experience. And for those people who are either want to have an awakening or have had an awakening and are maybe trying to figure out what this really means, I believe that we have to spend less time this way and more time this way, okay? And if you look at the first card of the tarot, which is the Magus, the Magician, he's like this, all right? Because we've got to be connected to both of them. Here in Cherokee land, they have the concept of the cosmic heart, the earth, heart of Mother Earth, and the human heart, okay? It always comes back to that. There has to be a balance in there. And that is what I have learned in my 2 years here in Appalachia, by grounding myself, by literally standing there in the morning with and visualizing my feet and my tailbone connected to Mother Earth, right? Because I think that, especially for men who don't have a rite of passage from boyhood to manhood anymore, that is one way to learn how to regulate our emotions, which I think is the key for so much of being a man in this society. And I think being grounded then allows us to freely open up to the heavens, to open up to the fifth dimension and beyond, whatever you want to call it, to have that Kundalini spirit rising, that Christ oil rising, okay? But that's what, those are the things I've learned on this journey after I came out of that dark night of the soul, which also, by the contrast, when I look back on it now, the contrast of the love and the dark night of the soul, and in the mix there, because it's so this human experience is so complex. There was what I talked about before was trauma bonding, all right, and bondage, which leads to bondage loops of fear, which leads to breaking point that shatters integrity. All of that, okay, all of that is in the mix of this experience. And the reason that we get into that, we go from that trauma bond to that bondage loop to that break point, is because we're not grounded, I believe, especially men. I can only speak for men, but I believe that that's what's happening to a lot of us. We're just not grounded. We're so disconnected from Mother Earth, physically and mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but physically, we've paved paradise and put up a parking lot, as the old song goes. So those are the things that have come out of this journey from Rythmia. There's a couple of quotes I got from Gerald Armand Powell. I haven't read his book called Shit the Moon Told Me. But Jerry did leave me with some wonderful mantras during my trips to Rythmia. One of them is do what you can to be a benevolent presence on the planet. It's something that I try to practice every day. And the other one was talking about pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And but he said that the universe rewards the brave. So it's very important for us to be brave, to examine our fears, turn those fears into anger, talked about this before, and then turn that anger into courage. And that's how we can be brave. So those are the things that have come out of this journey. Some of the things. There's a lot of great adventures, talking to entities through channelers, learning about light language, actually understanding light language. I did. I was able to intuit it. Taking an RV trip around the country for 10 weeks was a fascinating experience. All of these came out of that 2019 3 trips to Rythmia, leading to this new phase of life. So I am feeling like I'm going to go back. It's been almost 5 years, and the thought keeps coming up, and we'll see what's in store. But if you feel the calling to do the plant medicine ayahuasca or any other plant medicines, make sure you have a very good set and setting. Just be careful. You're opening yourself up, so learn how to protect yourself, all right? Which you can do with just simple words. You know, I only accept into my space beings of 100% divine light and love, right? Little things like that, and you'll be guided to everything else. So this concludes the summary of the Rythmia experience and the 5 years of integration. That's what they call it. And there's still more to come. I know that. And I don't know what it is, but I don't have to know. From that book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, there's a great quote in there, I am one with the mystery. So when you live in the present moment, we're just one with the mystery of what's going to happen in the next moment, much less the next hour, the next day, the next week. So be one with the mystery, enjoy the moment, and we'll see you later.